It is my great pleasure to introduce our guest today. If you're just joining, welcome to our Alumni AMA. I'm your host from Flatiron School, Lindsay Williams, and joining me is John Schulman, Senior Customer Solutions Manager with AWS, Amazon Web Services, here to talk about his journey to Flatiron School and what he's up to now. John, thank you so much for letting us chat with you today. How are you?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm great. I'm great. Thanks. And I'm out, you're on the East Coast. I'm out in Seattle. For anyone who's curious. Yeah.
How's the
But I
weather
was
up
at Flood. It's funny. It's people talk about how rainy it is out here, and it normally is, but in the summer we get we're supposed to get 3 straight months of just absolutely beautiful, perfect weather. But for the last 3 days, it has been raining, which is really disappointing. So it's not. I know, not what I signed up for,
Well, hopefully it'll clear up soon. Yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself. Kind of start with maybe the program that you were in at Flatiron School, and then tell us what you were up to before starting this crazy ride.
Yeah, so I participated in the coding boot camp at Flatiron, one of the locations back when it was in Washington, D.C., just, gosh, a stone's throw from the White House at the time. And I was doing the sort of web development. I don't actually recall exactly the name of the program, but it was sort of a web dev program. And it was, I don't even remember how long it lasted. It was I don't know, 10 weeks?
12?
Something like 15 weeks, 12. Yeah. Oh, 12. Yes, that sounds right.
12 or 15, weeks. Somewhere in there.
Yeah. So that was my Flatiron experience. And prior to coming to Flatiron, I had been a regulatory attorney with the federal government for almost 10 years. So I spent time at a couple of different federal agencies there in Washington. I was at the Department of Veterans Affairs, and I was at FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And I was at a point in my career where I'd been lawyering for long enough, and I'd kind of gotten to a point where I wanted to keep doing interesting things, and I didn't feel like I was doing interesting stuff anymore. And I've always had an interest in technology. It's just sort of something I'm curious about. And so going in, when I saw the Flatiron program, that seemed like a good opportunity for me to actually find out maybe this is a spot for me. Maybe this is, I'm going to become a star whiz programmer, and I'm gonna it's my secret talent. So that was why I participated in the program initially. Yeah, and again, I was already in DC, so it was very convenient that there was that campus at the time there.
Yeah. So is it fair to say that going into Flatiron School, you weren't quite sure what kind of role you were going to land out? Once you'd finished, you didn't have your sights or your heart dead set on programming, software engineer, code, what?
I really didn't know. I mean, I was in a very fortunate circumstance where my wife was very supportive, my family was supportive, and so they were giving me that opportunity. They said, go figure it out. If this is something that's going to be awesome for you, that's great. And even if not, go get yourself a new skill. And we'll figure it out from there. So I didn't have a particular vision in mind at the time.
What were your feelings on working with the government and just sort of being in that regulatory space?
Yeah, so I'm very passionate about federal service and public service, and so that had always initially been, when I went to law school, I did that because I wanted to work for the government. And one of the things that I was exposed to towards the end of my career in particular was something called the U.S. Digital Service, which is a office out of the White House. And essentially, they are developers, product managers, project managers that go into agencies and help them modernize their tech. And as I was in the final year or two of my time at Department of Veterans Affairs, we had a digital service team come in. And so I was working with them as we were kind of rebuilding some of our systems and reimagining how we as employees interacted with them to make them better for us, but then also in turn to mean that we were better at delivering to the citizens, to veterans, to their kids, to their spouses. And so that was when I saw that, I saw how it was that sort of user interaction could either block or enable as a tool, right? And so again, that was another piece of it for me going to Flatiron was like, oh well, this is like a piece of my my sort of like knowledge set that I don't really have, but it seems like there's something deeply important there to learn. Not that I was, going into data science, not that I was going to learn to like ones and zeros my way into programming the next great app, but it was important for me to understand it better so that I could know like, well, what do I do next?
Yeah. I mean, I can see how having this sort of skill set in a regulatory environment, one that, curious if you agree, can appear to be somewhat, stuck in old ways and entrenched in bureaucracy and red tape and, behind things like that, that like having your skill set married with a technical skill set is maybe filling a gap that that needs to be filled as a maturing government in the 21st century,
Yeah, absolutely. For me, what I found is that my experience at Flatiron and my prior professional experience has become much greater than the sum of their parts. I understand deeply in a fundamental nerdy way that nobody else is interested in why government or why regulations look the way they do, why government operates in the way that it does. But having that alongside a, what is now a very deep understanding of computer systems and programming, yes, but all of the technology components that this kind of opened me up to puts me in a unique position having those together to be able to translate between those two worlds and really see where they connect, where they don't connect, and where they're just sort of talking past each other. It's nobody's fault. It's just choo choo,
Yeah. That's a great way to put it. So tell us, what are you doing now? You're at Amazon Web
Yes.
Services. I know I should say the full thing because it's different than just being at Amazon, right?
Sure. Yeah. So Amazon Web Services, AWS. For anybody who doesn't know, Amazon AWS is one of the world's largest cloud providers. We offer cloud services. I don't. If I keep going, I'm sure I'm going to violate some sort of very specific way that we're supposed to talk about this stuff. But I'm in a role, customer solutions manager, where I directly support a set of customers. And so for me, what that means is that I have 3 federal agencies that I talk to and interact with and help out every single day. I'm partnered with them deeply to help them do. So it means that it's a little bit of a jack of all trades role. I'm a little bit program. I'm a little bit project management. I'm a little bit strategic, and a lot of big gopher. So a lot of my role is, or a lot of my day to day is listening to a customer talk about a problem and identifying, I think I know where this is going. Let me go get someone, this particular resource who can help. And what's really cool about that is that I'm able to identify the resources kind of before sometimes my agency customers even know what it is that they're asking for. And again, because I have this unique background, I'm able to talk in both languages. So I know how their procurement is kind of unique and different and special. And I also know how our procurement at AWS doesn't fit well with that. Again, and
Mhm.
so I can go back to our internal people and say, look, this is how we need to kind of work with this and shape it a little bit,
Hmm.
whether that's procurement or a service or a feature. And I mean, it's super rewarding. So yeah, so
That's awesome.
that's kind of what I do day to day. It's great. Yeah.
That's really cool. So I did what I didn't hear you say is spending time like in the code base and, programming. Tell us a little bit about your expectations coming out of the program. Like, is that something that you really wanted to do, or, because you're doing something very different, but it sounds like a really cool way, as we said before, of marrying these two things together.
Yeah. So coming out of the program, I did kind of naively think or want or hope that I was going to be 100% literate and a superstar when it came to a whole set of particularly of front end languages and patterns, etc. I was not. I
Mhm.
was also really bad in French in high school, so these things may be related. However, however, um, while I don't spend my days coding anything, what I do spend my days doing is listening to people who speak in technology and listening to people who certainly don't. And so I can't emphasize this enough. It's the translation between that. Um, I sort of joke when I'm explaining to customers what my level of technical expertise is. I say, I can barely identify a JSON object from a piece of loose leaf paper, but well, that's not entirely true. What is critical there is I'm able to drop like, look, I do know what a JSON object is. I do know what, I understand these fundamentals. If you tell me about your Xblix is doing too many PUDA boops, I have no idea what that means. But I think I know where the Xblix team is.
Uh-huh.
So it's that sort of learning the vocabulary and getting access to that
Uh-huh.
was was really critical. And now that I have that, I've been able to develop and grow my understanding much more deeply. I have a couple of side projects now that I'm doing in Python, which is not something that I learned at Flatiron, but learning the way that we did Ruby and JavaScript languages work, I was able to take that and translate it over to these other
Mhm.
programming languages. Again, I'm not perfect, but especially with the advent and help of uh, things like ChatGPT and other Gen AI, I'm able to use them in a way that, I couldn't hand them off to my parents and just say, go figure it out. You really have to understand these things, even with these kinds of new tools and resources that are available. You still have to understand what you're doing.
Yeah. Really believe that like that is such a powerful story in the value of coming through a program like Flatiron School where you are learning about technology and enough to be dangerous, enough to translate, as you say, and learn how to learn. Like you learned how to
Yeah,
figure out Python because you understood the fundamentals of these other programming languages. And yeah, I just think that's incredible. You don't have to leave the program only becoming a software engineer or only a data scientist. You can do so many things out there.
of course. Yeah, it's a tool set, and it is very similar to just to learning a new, maybe not a new language, but a new set of characters,
Hmm.
right? Like you couldn't um, give me a book in Cyrillic and I have no idea where to begin. I can't even sound it out. But thanks to Flatiron, I can at least sound it out. And from there, I was able to get a grip around things. It's allowed me to be where I am now after 5 years at AWS and having seen customers do just really, really cool, amazing stuff with AWS that I don't think I would have been able to understand or help with quite the same way that I was if I didn't have that if I wasn't able to read the characters.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. We've got a few questions coming in. So keep them coming in the Q&A. We'd love to see your questions. I'm going to start with Anne's question. Anne asks, so many job openings want different skill sets. Do you think that AWS certification is going to become more universal and therefore very valuable to have?
I think yes. Whether it's an AWS certification or Azure or GCP, it's Google's cloud, having that similar kind of to going through Flatiron, going through the process of getting that certification is about literacy. The cloud works the way the cloud works. And while all of these certification programs couch it in terms of, in their terms of art, and they'll call something a square and somebody else will call it a cube, you know what it is, after you sort of go through the process of studying and learning, et cetera. So I do think it's critical for people who are moving into the technology field today to understand how cloud really works, to be able to really use it. So that if you're applying to something that, say, has an Azure certification requirement, if you've already got the AWS certification, just like me learning Python, going that next step is going to be so much easier for you, and frankly necessary. Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Thank you, Anne. David asks, is your current role at AWS the role that you were hired for initially? As you mentioned, seems you wanted to be at the intersection of technological advancement for government agencies. Did you target this role specifically or happen upon it through your time with AWS?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit unique at Amazon generally. I am in the role that I was hired to be in the same organization. And my current boss started about 3 weeks before me, and she and I have been together the whole time.
Amazing.
Yeah. It's now I know a lot of people who have moved around a bit throughout Amazon. Totally normal. I'm a little bit of the weirdo, but that's, I think, just because I happened to land in the right role from the beginning. In terms of how I found this, a standard story. It was a friend of a friend who knew someone who heard about the role, who, though, when she came to me, she was like, John, you've got, you're coming out of Flatiron right now. You've got that whole programming, whatever the heck it is, and you've got your time in government. Somebody I know is hiring for a technology role supporting government. So it just happened to marry up well. But that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't been pretty vocal with friends and friends of friends. This is what I'm going through, and just sort of sharing my experience. And so that story got out, and it's sort of, that's how networking works, right? That's how jobs happen.
Yeah, amazing. That's really great. All right. Thank you, David. We've got one question from Francisco. In your experience, is age a factor when finding an entry-level position in software engineering? I am close to 40.
Hi, close to 40. I'm 42. And I had a full career before I dropped out of my career and started this. Is age a factor? I think for legal reasons, it can't be, but practical reasons, it isn't. No, I know folks who are brand new, who I interact with, who are in their 50s or beyond. I also know people who are coming straight out of college. Because things in the technology space are so discretely skill oriented, if you do the skill well, that's what the job is looking for. So I hope that don't be concerned that you're too old. You're not. I promise. Yeah. And in fact, just like me, I'm sure you've got other experiences, right? You're nearly 40, but that means that you've spent all this time gathering up other stuff that the people that are fresh out of college don't have. So, it's it's a feature, not a flaw in a lot of ways, that you had this time before now.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. That if any way you can leverage your past with this new skill set you have, just like you have, even if you don't want to be in the industry maybe forever, getting that first job is going to help you get to the next one. So take advantage of your experience prior and work it.
Yep.
Aaron asks, what percentage of your day involves customer interaction?
Ooh, let's say what percentage of my week, because day to day, changes. But for me, somewhere between like 30 to 70% of my day is customer interaction. Um, yeah. So,
Right.
and I will say that some of my customers are internal
Mhm.
um, to Amazon. That's just because I've put myself in a position where I do a fair amount of internal work for other teams where I'm helping to support them, folks who maybe don't understand government. So I'm again able to leverage these kinds of multiple skills together. But I still count those as customers in this case. So yeah, somewhere between 30 to 70%.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Aaron. Zuena asks, what was the most difficult coding language you've learned?
Oof. Well, the first one, Ruby, because I didn't had no idea what I was doing. What I remember being the most difficult though was uh oh, I've just lost it.
Is it a Flatiron or
Yeah, it was at Flatiron. It wasn't it was the JavaScript
React?
architecture. Yes, thank you. React.
Okay.
Didn't get it, still don't understand it.
Yeah.
Totally blows my mind. On occasion I try to go back to it and I'm just like, no, thank you. It's wonderful. It's so cool how it works, and like the ability to reuse assets and to pull from here over there. That's cool. I learned a lot.
Mhm.
Don't ever want to touch it again directly.
Yeah, I know people with the same point of view. All right, thanks, Zuena. David asks, can you describe your interviewing process for Amazon?
Sure. So I'm not sharing any weird secrets here. This is all available out on the internet. Amazon uses a process where we start with what's called a phone screen. So we'll start with, you'll talk to a recruiter, and that's if your resume has been pulled, or your application has been pulled. And that a very initial conversation is just to determine, hey, are we both on the same page here? Um, you'll then be passed along to what we call a phone screen. There are 1 to 2 phone screens typically. And what the phone screens are looking for is, are we both you and AWS, Amazon, lining up? And it's sort of that initial fit check. From there, if you continue, we do what's called a loop. And a loop, this is fairly standard within the technology industry and software industry. A loop is, for us anyhow, uh, 4 or 5 separate interviews back to back, and typically anyhow, and different people will come in, they'll ask a set of questions, and they're very narrative and behavioral, those questions, at least in my role. If you are in a technical role, there will be a technical component, right? There will be something like a whiteboarding component where you'll be asked to prove that you know what you say you know. And that's it. One of the nice things about Amazon is that we have a promise to get back to applicants and candidates within, I don't recall how long, but within, I want to say it's like 3 business days, and we really do try to keep to that. So it moves very quickly. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And you'll
Hey,
know pretty soon. Yeah.
it's a lot in this market.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dave asked a couple questions. I'm going to combine them for the sake of time. One is, can you describe your work-life balance, and thoughts on remote versus return to the office? And then any current hiring trends that you can give us insight into at AWS.
Sure. Work-life balance. I have a great work-life balance. As I said, I live out in Seattle, but all my customers are on the East Coast. And I have always, if you ever run into my parents, they'll tell you, I've always gone to bed really early and then gotten up really early. So I wake up at 5 a.m., I do a nice full day, and then there's still, it's like 3 o'clock outside, and I've got the rest of the day to experience. So for me, that's perfect. Um, I don't tend to work 90-hour weeks. I mean, these things happen, but we in my organization, anyhow, my piece of Amazon, we're very co-supportive. And so we're all looking out to make sure people are not in that circumstance. I can't speak for every team, but I've got a really good work-life balance. Return to office. That's a bigger question about industry trends. Because I am in a sales organization, my return to office is a little bit different because we were never in the office to begin with. So I'm probably not the best person to ask about that. And then in terms of hiring trends generally, no, actually, I don't know anything about hiring trends generally. Because I don't know, I'm not in that world. I know that I will say, we are seeing more hiring beginning to happen again within my organization. There was a time that had sort of flattened off, but it is beginning to ramp back up again. It may not ever get to the point where Amazon was during the pandemic, where we doubled over the course of, gosh, like 9 months or something. It may not ever get there again, but we are kind of back in hiring mode, yeah.
That's good. Great. I've left off one of his questions. Did you move there pre-pandemic to Seattle?
Technically, yes. I moved in January 2020. My wife and I got a lovely place. We'd never been here. We thought that's great. We're going to find a place downtown. We'll really explore the city. And then the entire world shut down forever. I moved here unrelated to AWS. I was already working for AWS, but my wife got a job with Amazon. And so they moved us out here for her. But yeah.
That's cool.
So I had been with AWS before the pandemic.
Amazon family. I love it.
Yep.
Well, that puts us right at time. Thank you for sending through your questions, everyone. I really appreciate them. And big thanks to you, John. How could folks connect with you after today? Can they connect with you on LinkedIn, or what's a good way?
LinkedIn would be great. You find my profile, feel free to send me a message. I'm happy to chat further with absolutely anybody. And appreciate the questions and all the active participation.